So I spent the last week and a half trying really hard to make a video to no avail. I went through the entire planning process, I scripted it, I asked for advice on the script, I recorded it, and I got a good quarter of the way through editing it before I decided to scrap it and make this instead. See, I was trying really hard to make a universally applicable conversion guide to help you take your D&D 5th edition character and make them in Pathfinder 2e. However, my final result of this entire process is that there is no magic rule for character conversion. The systems just don't line up mathematically. Sure, they line up thematically, there's orcs and fighters, but you're never going to be able to just take your 5e fighter and make them in Pathfinder 2e just by copying everything over. So what I've decided to do instead for you here today is do a live conversion for you. My good friend Tabaxi Cafe here on YouTube has given me permission to use their half-orc fighter, Raya, as today's example. They're a level 5 samurai subclass fighter with some extra flavor going on in the way of a prosthetic leg weapon. This video is going to have pretty minor editing. I'll be cutting out dead air, but otherwise I will just be showing you on screen live as I fill in a Pathfinder 2e character sheet for a level 5 D&D 5e character. Hopefully this will show you my process for converting a character and will help you out in the future. This is one you don't really have to watch. You can just as well listen to it and get 90% of what I'm going to talk about. So throw me on in the background, load up a video game or something, and let's get to it. Hey guys, before we get into the video proper, there's something I sort of need to talk about. Over the last 4 months or so, I've been in a partnership, there's no other way to say it, a partnership with a man, and he's been incredibly important to me. And I'm not going to say his name because I don't want to get him involved directly, but he is my G Fuel representative. And you know there's no one more important in life than your G Fuel representative. And I was on Twitter this morning, I was editing this video you're watching right now, and what do I see? I see that my rep has been cheating on me with some tiefling named Melissa. Didn't tell me. No, maybe if you had told me, I wouldn't be calling you out like this. You're lucky I'm leaving your name out of this. But the fact that you went behind my back and also gave Melissa free G Fuel and a code for a percentage off at checkout. What, is her code also NONAT, N-O-N-A-T, for 20% off your order at checkout? Did you give that to her too? Look, Red, we can fix this, but you need to be honest with me. No more secrets. I mean, what does this tiefling even look? You know what, I get it, okay. But I'm not happy about it. Look, Rep, you better make sure everyone who uses code NONAT, N-O-N-A-T, at checkout gets at least 20% off their order, okay? Maybe we can fix this. Yeah, I'd be hot too if I had sexy demon horns and a tail and great hair. Just some quick information on Raya. They are a retired ex-assassin, missing an arm and a leg, and their leg has been replaced, as I said, by a prosthetic, which is their weapon of choice. See, this is an interesting thing where later we'll find that some of this flavor is actually going to become mechanically feasible in Pathfinder 2e, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So, jumping right into it, we know character's name is Raya, player's name is Tabby, and Ancestry and Heritage is where things are instantly going to get a little bit different. Unlike D&D, Half-Orc is not a core ancestry in Pathfinder 2e. Rather, a Half-Orc is a heritage of, by default, human, but you can see in this sidebar that Half-Orcs can actually be half-orc and half anything. What this does for you is, while you don't get a direct bonus from having a heritage, you do get access to both orc feats, half-orc feats, and the feats of your original ancestry. So if you wanted to be a half-gnome, half-orc, you could. But to keep things simple and as close to the parallel as possible, we're going to go with a human half-orc.
Because our base ancestry is human, we're going to follow everything on the sidebar here, meaning we're going to get 8 base hit points, medium size, 25 movement speed, 2 free ability boosts of our choice. Well, we know Raya is incredibly dexterous first and strength second, so we do want to sort of reflect that here. So we're going to go ahead and put 2 points, or 1 boost into dexterity and 1 into constitution. We also get the human and humanoid traits, which so rarely even come up, but sometimes things only affect humans. Since Raya's base ancestry is human, there's actually nothing special about humans, at least to put in the special tab. Our heritage was half orc, meaning can take orc feats, and speaking of those feats, we can pick one for first level. This is one of the first places we'll need to take some creative liberties because unlike D&D 5e, where we can see Raya gets dark vision and menacing intimidation skill and relentless endurance, we don't get all of that automatically. We get 1 ancestry feat, which could be something like Orc Sight, which does give dark vision, or Orc Ferocity, which stops us from going down at 0 hit points. You don't get all of it unlike D&D 5e, so there might be times like this you need to make some choices. So personally, I'm going to take Orc Ferocity because I just think that is what makes orcs so unique, and a lot of why people might play an orc in D&D 5e in the first place. You don't go down for 1 hit per day. Right on their character sheet, we can see that Raya does have the criminal background, so we can go right over here and pick the same criminal background in Pathfinder 2e and apply the appropriate bonuses. First one is a boost to dexterity or intelligence. Like we said before, Raya is very dexterity focused, and then the other one is a free boost of our choice. I think we're going to go ahead and put that into strength because Raya is not weak. You can see on the character sheet for 5e, they do still have a 13 strength, so some strength is useful. She also gets trained in the stealth skill, trained in underworld lore, so we'll mark trained in stealth and trained in lore, where we can just write in underworld. And also under skill feats, we can write the experienced smuggler skill feat. Now, class is a pretty easy 1-to-1. She's a fighter in D&D 5e, and she's gonna be a fighter in Pathfinder 2e. So, key ability score, strength, or dexterity. So we're going to put fighter up here, and we can boost strength or dexterity by 2. Let's go ahead and boost dexterity up, and this leads us to our final 4 free boosts that every single character gets. Now we have some choices. We could crank up strength a little bit, get a little bit more damage on every hit. We could max out dexterity, both for accuracy and armor class. We could mess around with wisdom, charisma. Well, we don't want charisma. Raya's horrible at charisma. But I think because Raya has a -1 charisma in 5e and a 10 wisdom, we can safely just bump up strength, dex, con, and intelligence and call it a day. So let's go ahead and do that. Strength to 14, dex to 18, con to 14, intelligence to 12, and boom, we have got Raya's stat array. Stat Raya. Now that things are finalized, let's take a quick step back, because if we look back at human, we speak common and 1 plus our intelligence modifiers. Since Raya has a +1 intelligence, that means we get to pick 2 more languages besides common that Raya can speak. According to the 5e sheet, she only I wrote Raya in languages. Can you tell I'm tired? According to the 5e sheet, Raya can only speak Common and Orc, which means we can take one more liberty with whatever language we want to give her. She's a criminal, so let's go ahead and give her Undercommon, maybe. That just sounds fun. Maybe she's had some shady dealings with some underground folk in the past. Also, because she's a fighter, 10 plus Constitution mod hit points on top of the 8 she got from being human. So, 10 plus 2 from Constitution is 12, giving Raya a total of 20 starting hit points at level 1. Next up, let's look at our starting proficiencies and just go right down the list here. We know that fighters, and thus Raya, are expert in perception, expert in fortitude and reflex saves, and trained in will saves. We're going to go right down here. We're going to hit the E on perception, E on fortitude, E on reflex, and T on will, and boom, there's our starting saving throws and perception score. Next, she's trained in acrobatics or athletics, which I'm going to go ahead and take acrobatics, not only because her dexterity score is an 18, but also I've seen Tabby play Raya in a one-shot adventure, and Raya does some big flippy stuff. She also gets 3 plus intelligence modifier in additional skills, so let's go ahead and put those into athletics. We knew she was trained in intimidation before, so let's keep it that way. She's already got stealth from her background, so let's give her society, because as an assassin, I think both society and thievery would come well in handy. Next, we can mark down weapon and armor proficiencies. In Pathfinder 2e, fighters are expert in simple, martial, and unarmed attacks, and they are trained in all advanced weapons. They're also trained in unarmored defense, light armor, medium armor, and heavy armor. And finally, the fighter class DC, which is just based off of your higher between dexterity and strength. Since dex is higher, our key ability score is dexterity. We're trained with it, giving us a 17 class DC. Now we have a few more things to go over at level 1. As you can see in the level 1 box on the advancement table, we have our ancestry, background, and initial proficiencies. Everything we just covered is done. The only other things we get are attack of opportunity, shield block, and a fighter feat. So right down here on the second page, we can already write shield block, attack of opportunity, because not all characters get attack of opportunity in Pathfinder 2e. In fact, only fighters start with it. Everyone else has to take it as a higher level feat. And finally, we need to pick our first level fighter feat. Because we are a martial class, aka not a spellcasting class, we get a feat at first level of our choice. This is where we are once again going to need to take some creative liberties and look over the character sheet. We do see that primarily Raya uses a katana to fight. It's their highest to hit bonus, their highest damage. Sometimes they use the whip for range, but primarily katana. Opening up the equipment chapter of the core rulebook, we can see the katana. It is technically uncommon, so you'll need your GM's permission technically to use this, but trust me, we're going to get a lot weirder once we get to the prosthetic, which will need GM permission. We can see the katana right here, 1d6 slashing with all of these traits, so we can just go ahead and copy these traits, go over to the character sheet, scroll up to our weapons, paste them in the traits area, put katana, 1d6 damage plus strength, which is a +2, and slashing damage. With versatile piercing, so we can also do piercing damage. So I've gone ahead and finished writing in Raya's two main weapons, their katana and their whip. Now this is going to change at a higher level because of the way Raya's character is written. It's worth mentioning, I should have said this a little while ago, Raya was written as a level 5 character. They're not a character who went from 1st to 5th level, so like you would do in D&D, there's going to be some choices made during character creation that won't make a whole lot of sense until you're the appropriate level, since you're starting at that level anyway. One of these weird choices is the katana. Technically, it is not an optimal weapon because it uses your strength stat, not your dexterity, to attack with it. Thus, that's why it is less accurate than the finesse whip. But it still does decent damage, 1d6 plus 2, if wielded in two hands, which, according to Flavor, is actually impossible because Raya, remember, is missing an arm. It would be a d10, and if it gets a critical hit, it adds an extra d8 to its damage, and the whip, while it has a slightly smaller damage die, does have reach, and can use that dexterity to accuracy, but not to damage. With this and the future of the build in mind, there's only one or two really accurate feats I would recommend for Raya at first level. At first I thought, oh, double slice, attacking with two weapons sounds rad, and then I remembered you need to have two hands for that. So we're going to go ahead and give Raya Exacting Strike, a very powerful and underrated feat that it can't be used on your first attack per turn, but if all you're going to be doing is attacking 3 times per turn, then you can use Exacting Strike on your second attack, and if you miss, your multiple attack penalty does not increase, meaning you are even more likely to hit that third attack if you happen to miss the second one. Next, let's pick some armor for the girl. We see she wears leather. Leather is great for full dexterity characters, so we'll go ahead and give her leather armor, which if we go to the Pathfinder 2e character sheet, we know she will be trained in. Her dexterity cap is 4, and it gives a +1 item bonus to armor class, giving you 18. And now aside from little bits of adventuring gear like a bedroll and water skin and stuff, Raya is ready to be played. They have their first level feat, they've got their ancestry and their background and everything, their weapons, their skill proficiencies. This is a level 1, it said Ray this entire video. This is a level 1 Raya ready to be played. But we're not done. Raya is level 5 in D&D, and even beyond that, Raya has a special subclass that we're going to need to try to replicate. So once again, while I wish it was easy to say, level 5 in D&D, level 5 in Pathfinder, copy over, there's no easy way to skip over the leveling process. If you want to become a level 5 Pathfinder character, you're going to need to make your level 2, 3, 4, and 5 choices in the system. So starting at level 2, they get a fighter feat and a skill feat. Now we're actually going to forego that fighter feat in exchange for what's known as an archetype. An archetype is something that is outside your class, and while you still get your main class progression, you trade your feat for what is called the dedication. And Pathfinder 2e in their Guns and Gear supplement has something called the Sterling Dynamo, which is a prosthetic usable for combat. So upon taking this feat, we need to pick what kind of dynamo Raya has, and I've decided on the manual percussive striker dynamo. I know it sounds like a lot, let me explain. Percussive Striker is a 1d4 weapon that has agile and finesse, meaning it can be used with dexterity to attack rolls. So we can go ahead and add that right as a weapon. Now, I know that Raya uses the Warpick stats for their homebrewed 5e prosthetic leg, and honestly, this is something I would be okay with. I bet 99% of tables would be okay with homebrewing. Technically, the Percussive Striker Dynamo does bludgeoning damage, but I bet if you homebrewed it to piercing because you like having that sharp metal pointed leg you can stab people with, it won't break the game. So we're going to set it to piercing damage, and the reason I specifically said this is a manual prosthetic leg is because it increases the damage die from a D4 to a D6 and just requires the use of a free hand to activate it and make sure it's useful in fights. So maybe there's a little lever that Raya pulls that sort of like elongates it or whatever. That's totally up to your flavor. It just makes it so it has a requirement of a hand but deals a little more damage. So with that weapon completely added, we can scroll down to feat number 2 and know we took the Sterling Dynamo dedication. Also at even levels in Pathfinder 2e, you get skill feats. Now I just did a quick once-over of Raya's character sheet, and this is just a place that Pathfinder 2e has expanded that D&D 5e doesn't really have. These skill feats are unique upgrades and new actions you can take based on your skill proficiencies, so Raya doesn't really have anything as a level 5 fighter that coincides with any skill feats in Pathfinder 2e. So once again, this is where we can take some creative liberties, and like I said, Raya loves doing flips and fancy maneuvers, so something like Catfall, to start treating falls as shorter than they seem or actually are, is great, meaning she can fall 10 feet or so without taking any damage, and if she falls more than 10 feet, the fall is treated as 10 feet shorter, and this distance actually goes up as her acrobatics proficiency does. Level 3, we're looking at Bravery, which is going to increase her will saves and give her bonuses against fear effects. So we'll just nudge those will saves from trained to expert. There's also a skill increase, which for the sake of a skill feat we're going to get next level, I'm going to go ahead and increase her stealth to expert. She is very, very quiet when she needs to be. And finally, we need to pick a general feat. This is the first time you may get to pick one unless you are a very specific ancestry with a feat. So your general feat is going to be one of a lot of different options. Well, I guess not that many. This is all of them in the core rulebook. Typically, general feats are going to improve something that otherwise is very hard to upgrade. For example, movement speed you can increase with Fleet. Initiative bonus you can get with Incredible Initiative. I think I actually like the idea of Feather Step for Raya here. Feather Step, as long as you have 14 dexterity, which she does, means you can take the step action into difficult terrain, which is usually not possible. So we can go all the way down to level 3 general feats and hit Feather Step. Easy. And then if you need a reminder, step into difficult terrain. Next up at level 4, we have another class feat. Now this is one that's actually a pretty hard choice, and I think it would be up to the player themselves which one they would prefer. I think very flavorful for Raya, who is usually experienced with fighting with a single weapon. In fact, on their 5e character sheet, they have the dueling fighting style, giving them a bonus when using one melee weapon. We could take Dueling Parry. This is a one-action ability that each round you can use it and give yourself +2 to armor class while you're wielding exactly one weapon. Alternatively, if the player wanted to have a little more fun with their prosthetic, they could take Modular Dynamo. You pick one of the following list of options, which is a an agile one, which we already have, a bludgeoning one, which is the original power driver, a d6 slashing sickle, and a d6 grappling barbs. And for one action in combat, you can switch between your original prosthetic attack and this new one. So if you want to have sort of a more Swiss Army knife prosthetic leg, you would want this feat. But if you want to focus a little bit more on one-handed fighting, which remember, because we chose the manual prosthetic, that is technically a one-handed weapon because you are using it to work with it with one hand. Personally, to match up better with the 5e character sheet, I'm going to take Dueling Parry because that reflects the dueling fighting style that Raya has in 5e. Oh, two things I haven't been doing as I'm leveling up is to increase the level up here, because with the character sheet I'm using, that does automatically update the rest of the character sheet, and updating hit points by 10 plus 2 is 12 per level. We've gone up 3 levels. That's 36 extra hit points. And at this point, level 4, I think Raya is about where she would be as a level 5 D&D character. There's not an exact one-to-one, level 5 in D&D doesn't mean level 5 in Pathfinder 2e. And I was able to pretty well replicate everything except for the martial versatility feat. There is currently really nothing to my knowledge that represents the maneuvers of a battle master, which is what you get from the martial adept feat in 5e. There is no superiority die or anything like that, and honestly, I felt it was more important to represent the battle prosthetic than try to find some archetype that could represent this one feat Raya took to gain these 2 maneuvers. The prosthetic felt much more important to the character than to fancy combat maneuvers, but otherwise, things are pretty much there. We've got the dueling fighting style. We've got the relentless endurance and the intimidation proficiency. We've got the fancy prosthetic weapon. We've got the katana. We've got the whip. And on top of all of that, we've got some fancy other tricks too, like increasing armor class with a parry, exacting strike to make multiple attacks a little bit more accurate, catfall to fall farther, quiet allies, which I totally forgot to mention I picked up, but it just makes her really good at going, shut the f*** up. So yeah, are they the exact same character in every single facet? No. But I'm afraid with conversion to 5e to 2e, they're never going to be the exact same from a purely mechanical point of view. But you know where they will be and can be the same is in your roleplay. Just because you're switching systems or even switching worlds doesn't mean you need to roleplay the character any differently. I'm sure if Tabby picked this character up and played in a level 4 one-shot, she would be able to experience a very similar Raya to the Raya of 5e, albeit with different structural rules because it's a different system and potentially a different world if it took place in Galarian. So there we go. There we have it. I hope you were able to follow along. I'm sorry things were like a little choppy. I don't know why my computer is dying right now. I might need to do a system reset at some point, but this was interesting. I had never done a higher level conversion from a 5e to 2e character, and again, I wish I was able to say it's simpler than it is. In a lot of cases, you might be better off just remaking the character from scratch, and who knows, you might end up going in a different direction with them. But if you want to do exactly what you did in 5e with 2e, you might find some things are more difficult, like the maneuvers and the superiority die, but you also might find out there's rules to turn some flavor, like the battle prosthetic, into an actual mechanical option that exists for character progression. But that's it for me. I want to give a huge shout out to Tabaxi Cafe on YouTube and their amazing artwork of Raya. They do artwork over on Twitter. Links to both their YouTube and Twitter in the description. And yeah, I hope this was helpful to some of you, at least with an idea of how to go about converting a character. It's never going to be super easy, but I think your best bet is to have fun with it. Make it an event, make it a chance to build a new character with a goal in mind, but don't let it limit you from exploring your options in a new system. I don't know how to end this video, so I'm just going to walk away. The video ended, right? Right?